fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia ginger tea drink and Alleluia tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
March 2023. Good morning, Uganda. My name is Philomena Masco. Welcome to a new week, today being a Monday. It's a fresh start of a new something that we're looking at. But also welcome back from the weekend. Whichever way it went, I want to believe it was better than the previous one. But if it didn't, there is quite a whole lot for it to make it better for you as we are starting off a new one. For those of you that went to church, welcome back from that. I hope the sermons that you picked, the preachings that you picked from your respective churches, you get to have them implemented in your daily life. But also a lot did happen over the weekend. Speaking of church, I did see the Ginger Catholic Diocese come through to announce that they needed 2.2 billion Uganda shillings. Now this should be in terms of getting ready for the Uganda Matters Day this year as they are hosting. But very many questions are also being raised about this money, because when you look at this 2.2 billion Uganda shillings, it is twice as much as what was asked for by the Fort Portal Diocese that did host last year. And again, if we are to compare it to the Gulu Diocese that hosted back in 2019, it's 3 times more than this. Now the question is, where is this money going to come from, considering that standards of living are really high, costs of living are high? Where does this church think that this money is going to come from? A couple of questions were being formed around that over the weekend, but also quite a lot happening on the international scene, especially when it comes to the sad stories. Cyclone Freddie is really not doing quite well to the people over there who are really being affected. In fact, as of Saturday, the number of deaths had actually gone up to about 400, and for the displaced people, already we're having about 300,000 people that are not into their homes. Seeing schools being extended, especially when it comes to the reopening, because most of them are being used as holding camps for young men, women and children. I'm sure that Mullen has quite a whole story on that. Tell us the effect, the long effect of this cyclone, especially to the people around there. Speaking of which, Mullen, good morning.
Yes, a very good morning to your family. Well, it's quite bad news coming in from there. If you look at areas of Malawi, Mozambique that have been really badly hit by Freddie, making a landfall for the second time, and we still feel the effects over there. It's really a devastating situation. And these guys have been through a lot, because you look at last year alone, that area had about 4 tropical cyclones hitting there. So there's already been a lot of displacements, a lot of death, damages to property. And well, we do have humanitarian organizations that are on ground to make sure that they help. But there are things you don't help in, especially when it comes to death. Those people are losing their lives. But we also look at the effect that it in turn actually causes to the weather in East Africa here. Because wherever there are those tropical cyclones, usually the eastern part of Uganda is also not performing well in terms of rainfall. But once it makes landfall, then most of the moisture that would be going to those low pressure systems now is bouncing back, which is why we're starting to see actually some of the rains picking up for especially Mount Elgon Highlands and then parts of the Victoria Basin. So we also do hope that we might have a better performing wet weather conditions, especially for the southern sector of Uganda. But we do hope that doesn't also come with extreme weather events like flooding. We've already started seeing those. This morning we did actually start off with rains, and while it might be quite small around Lake Victoria, we could also be having much more rains coming through, especially for western Uganda. That has been forecast to receive much more of the rains compared to the rest of Uganda. So yes, we'll be monitoring the situation to see how we can keep updating our people, especially in terms of the likelihood of heavy rains for the country.
I mean, it can't always be rosy. In as much as we love the rains, obviously they have a downside to it. But anyway, we'll see how we'll go about that. Felix, good morning. I did talk about 2.2 billion Uganda shillings for the upcoming annual event of Uganda Matters Day. Where is that money going to come from? Yes.
Yeah, but of course the celebrations are quite big deal for Uganda.
True.
And the budget is quite simple. Because if you have over 5 billion people who compete, that's not all in the world. Let's speak about the example. You can imagine how many people can do that. Let's say fortnight activity that run there for make money. And that's the thing we want to discuss. So I think it's something. The budget is running around that. So
The only issue that is the budget is always taking on an escalating mode every year that goes by. The question is, where this money are we going to be able to meet? And you see, the diocese gives valid reasons as to why this budget is increasing. When you talk about being well prepared, also trying to make sure that they perform way better than the previous diocese, then they give their number of reasons. But you see, the believers are wondering, 2.2 billion.
No, but I think also it gives us just a leapfrog into what we should prepare for. I know for a fact, even if the money isn't gotten the way it's expected, that day will be celebrated. So, if you've done functions, you keep on cutting the budget as you approach the function.
True.
Noticing what you have, what you don't have, and what you'll be able to get. So, we generally pray that they're able to get that money. But normally,
yes,
come
they always chip in.
Yeah, but various stakeholders. We have sponsors for the day, we have the various beverage companies, many. So sometimes, I guess, the people come in to give a hand. Let's just pray they get this. If they don't, still, I can tell you as a matter of fact, that day will happen.
True. At least to ensure that the biggest areas of concern are addressed, looking at the health, looking at security, to mention but a few. Roberts, good morning. Welcome back from the weekend.
Good morning to you, and of course, good morning, family. Well, there's so much being said, more so on that event, but I want to tell you, I think our religious leaders are picking a yardstick from what government does. If you people, you look at these budgets for Women's Day celebration, Janan Lumo celebrations, Labor Day celebrations, I don't know if you've been privileged to look at some of these budgets, but none goes below about 1.5 billion. Uganda shillings, and that we're just converging a one-day thing. Maybe that is going to begin from about 3, and by 4 it's done.
Yes.
And the budget is about 1.6, 1.8, just a single day. Actually, let's call them hours.
Yeah, because these events, some of them don't really cover the
Yes,
entire
so
day.
I've been looking at the budgets we spend on these occasions, and they have always been scaring me. But now when we see something that lasts for about a week or so, going to 2 point something, I think, yes, like Felix said, we could reduce the budget as time comes in case you've not gotten the money, but we also must re-examine ourselves, our integrity as Ugandans, and our priorities. We look at for example, why do you have to have I hear mass squatters from where this time, transport them, feed them, do that, do this, then you're going to have, there's so much I find in our functions of the country that's not needed for. I've gone to these government functions. People in the morning, they give them heavy breakfast.
The government officials?
Yes, quality of Serena. You know, and they're going to have heavy lunch. Quality of maybe Sheraton in a top hotel. Why, you know? Then drinks are flowing like drinks. Then sometimes after this after party, you know, who came from that woman that not eating? And I go first of all for breakfast. You know, I look at the these artists sometimes that are transported to sing. You know, even those that just make noise, and they'll tell you they have been paid some good money. So I think we should learn to minimize. But Ugandans, by and large, we have a culture of extravagance. Look at our weddings. You know, someone says to me, I want this type of cards, and they're not saying that on their money, but they're expecting you
to come in with your contributions, your donations, and whatnot. Yes.
But from that, at least we have a reason to celebrate. That is our boys, Jacob Chiplimo, who won. That is the men's half marathon 2023, New York City. He did us proud, and of course Joshua Chitege. You have the gold, you have the silver, and these guys I think have proved to be consistent over and over again. Now you just know there's a marathon. You're either having gold, you're having silver, or bronze. And of course, Ruben will be giving us more hopefully on this. But I find it very interesting that they have maintained. You know, I cherish consistency, and consistency in winning. These guys do us proud wherever they participate in any form of marathon.
Well, honestly, I hope we have also young people who could actually be able to fill, you know, some of these gaps eventually when that time comes. But indeed, well done to our boys for raising our flag higher. But also still speaking of international news, there is quite a lot that is happening. I'll tell you that Ukraine has come out to express quite a lot of its dissatisfaction towards the visit of President Vladimir Putin, who is the president of Russia, after he made his first visit to Mariupol. Now, you'd be wondering why. Mariupol was a town that was previously belonging to Ukraine, but after the Russian invasion last year, definitely they drove out everybody, and currently it is occupied by the Russian troops. So yesterday, actually over the weekend, the president of Russia made his first official visit to this place, and he was moving around. He drove around the town himself. This did not really exactly sit well with very many Ukrainians, but also this was just a few hours after international prosecutors came out to declare President Vladimir Putin an international criminal. Why? Because he had committed very many crimes of war. So there is a lot of pressure, there is a lot of tension, there are very many ropes that are being pulled. I would really love to know where this is going to end up. But well, international stories always happening here and there, but also getting into our local stories right now. There is indeed a lot that happened over the weekend. Robert here could be giving us some of the highlights. Well,
we begin with the arrival of the Somalia president in Uganda, who arrived to attend a pass out of trainees from Somalia at the Special Forces training grounds. Well, the president of the Federal Republic of Somalia, His Excellency Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, arrived last evening in Uganda for the pass out of Somali trainees at the Special Missions Training Center, Butiaba in Bulisa district today. His Excellency Mohamud was accompanied by his daughter. The Somali leader was received at Entebbe International Airport by the Uganda Minister for Defense, Honorable Vincent Sempija, Brigadier General Stephen Chigundu, the Deputy Commander, Uganda Air Forces, AIGP Brigadier General Damulira Christopher, the Police Director of Crime Intelligence, Mr. Samuel Akena, Deputy Commissioner General, Uganda Prison Services, and Major General Nathan Mugisha, Deputy Ambassador of Uganda to Somalia.
Now, in local stories, Jacob Kiplimo's stars has continued to shine after trumping at the 2023 New York Half Marathons this Sunday. Now, afternoon, the 22-year-old sensation crossed the line in 1 hour, 1 minute, reducing the compatriot Joshua Kiptegei to second place by almost a minute. Now, the success earned Kiplimo 20,000 United States dollars, which is an equivalent of about 73 million Ugandan shillings, while Kiptegei in the second got half that price.
And moving on, Muslims of Ruwero district converged at Kasana Umeya grounds to witness the consecration of Sheikh Ramadan Mulindwa as the new district Qadi. The consecration of Sheikh Mulindwa comes at a time when the Muslims of Uganda are at a turning point following several years of disunity. Prime Minister Robert Nabanja represented President Museveni at the ceremony.
Now, the 5 million condolence pledge and 1 million shilling assistance towards each of the victims of the recent Sinotrack crash at Kasaka Senior Secondary School in Gomba district, promised by Yoweri Musikaguta Museveni, has been delivered. Now, the State Minister for Kampala Affairs, Kabuye Chofatogabye, who was in company of the State House Controller Jane Badeche and local leaders, delivered the condolence.
Well, looking at some of the international stories, a Chinese President Xi Jinping, who is due to arrive in Moscow later on Monday for talks, has called for a rational way out of the Ukraine crisis, but has acknowledged it will not be easy to reach a solution. Writing in the Russian newspaper Rossiyskaya Gazeta, a daily published by the Russian government, Xi said discussions could be based on China's 12-point proposal for a political settlement published last month. Xi added that the paper reflected as much as possible the views of the global community. Xi's visit to Moscow is his first since Putin sent Russian troops into Ukraine in February 2022, with Beijing casting itself as a neutral party even after it reaffirmed its close ties with its northern neighbor. The Chinese president will be the first world leader to meet Putin since the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant against him last week. Well, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi has favorably received an invitation from Saudi Arabia's King Salman to visit the kingdom following the reconciliation deal between the two countries, according to an Iranian official. The two regional heavyweights announced on March 10th a Chinese brokered deal to restore ties 7 years after they were severed. Now, Riyadh cut relations after Iranian protesters attacked Saudi diplomatic missions back in 2016 following the Saudi execution of Shia cleric Nimr al-Nimr, just one in a series of flashpoints between the two long-standing regional rivals. The deal is expected to see Shia-majority Iran and mainly Sunni Muslim Saudi Arabia reopen their embassies and missions within 2 months and implement security and economic cooperation deals signed more than 20 years ago.
Now, Kenya's deputy president has tried to take a radical step to reduce alcohol abuse in the country's central region by saying that the country's government should only allow one pub per town, but not everyone is convinced that this is a good plan. Even if they shut down all the bars, we will still drink, Charles Ngugi says as he sips his local popular draft beer. It was dark in the bar, but the morning came through as the blinds flapped in the wind. This is not cheap or illegal liquor, so why do they want to interfere with my lifestyle and my party mood? He asks as he raises his voice to be heard above the music blaring from the counter in the nearly drowning out the conversation. Four other men in smaller bar all drinking at a wooden bench next to long tables. Middle-aged man as well staggers into the bar and dances and sings along a Kikuyu language before slamming onto the benches to join his friends. In climate news, governments gave their blessing on Sunday to a major new UN report on climate change after approval was held up by a battle between rich and developing countries over emission targets and financial aid to vulnerable nations. The report by hundreds of the world's top scientists was supposed to be approved by government delegations on Friday at the end of a week-long meeting in Swiss town of Interlaken. The closing gavel was repeatedly pushed back as officials from big nations such as China, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, and the United States and the European Union hanged through the weekend over the wording of key phrases in the text. The report by the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change caps a series that digests a vast amount of research on global warming compiled since the Paris Climate Accord that was agreed upon in 2015.
Well, away from that, we'll be also looking at your daily health check. What do you plan on doing for your health as this week starts? Robert here has quite one or two words to share with you.
Well, it's cold weather and sometimes it comes with a number of diseases, infections. So all you need to do is boost your immune system. And how do you do that? Well, we have products from Alleluia Reflexology, Alleluia Ginger Tea Drink, Alleluia Banana Juice Drink, and Alleluia Tamarind Drink. What these do, they boost your immune system. It's just 1,500. Any retail shop, any supermarket, you'll get these drinks.
Well, there you go. But today, Monday, it may shift away from being quite a coincidental Monday to being a historic Monday. Why? Because we do have a number of African countries that are intending to hold protests against their governments. The main reasons here is that they are challenging and they're also expressing their dissatisfaction with the way their respective governments are handling political and economic situations. Reasons, of course, are ranging from a couple of things. We are looking at things like cost of living, looking at things like corruption, things like rolling power cuts on a daily, electoral reforms, to mention but a few. 6 African countries holding protests today, including our closest neighbor here, that is being Kenya. Now the question is, do these have a massive spillover effect on a country like Uganda, but also on any other African country, considering that we do have quite a number of problems mutually? We share the same problems. How we handle them definitely is different. But also another question to consider is that protests and demonstrations, are these the final answer to some of these questions? Will they deliver the answers we would love as African countries or as developing countries? Well, all of that we'll be discussing between myself and Felix in the newsreel. But also in the meantime, it's very important to have your big stories in our dailies. And of course, that is the New Vision and the Daily Monitor. Looking at the New Vision this morning, Cabinet approves school fees policy. What policy are we talking about? Schools not to sell uniforms, charging for food band, among others. But also looking at Karema is a new Miss Uganda. We did have the finalists declared over the weekend, and today you'll be getting that full story in the New Vision. And when Museveni Kabaka loaded Nabagereka, that another story you can look out for in the New Vision this morning. But also looking at the Daily Monitor. Felix, what do we have?
Overhaul at Bank of Uganda sparks job fights, and of course we'll be looking at Obongi Ferry back after 3 years. And still in the Daily Monitor, now Champs bid security to install rival Omukuka. Okay, and Indians are nationals on the spot over shillings 13 billion fraud claim, and Uganda's Kiplimo wins 72 million in New York City half marathon.
There you go. Grab yourself a copy of each and find out those stories and the more details that are all encrypted in there We'll go for a break at the song of the day. When we get back, we have Good Morning Uganda Newsreel coming up, and much later on the traffic updates and more from Weather and Climate. With Molen, we do have the agenda as well, not forgetting the sports updates, and finally Good Morning Uganda Extra. We'll be back shortly after this. 20th of March 2023. Good morning, Uganda. My name is Philomena Masco. Welcome to a new week, today being a Monday. It's a fresh start of a new something that we're looking at. But also welcome back from the weekend. Whichever way it went, I want to believe it was better than the previous one. But if it there is quite a whole lot for it to make it better for you as we are starting off a new one. For those of you that went to church, welcome back from that. I hope the sermons that you picked, the preachings that you picked from your respective churches, you get to have them implemented in your daily life. But also a lot did happen over the weekend. Speaking of church, I did see the Ginger Catholic Diocese come through to announce that they needed 2.2 billion Ugandan shillings. Now this should be in terms of getting ready for the Uganda Matters Day this year as they are hosting. But very many questions are also being raised about this money, because when you look at this 2.2 billion Uganda shillings, it is twice as much as what was asked for by the Fort Portal Diocese that did host last year. And again, if we are to compare it to the Gulu Diocese that hosted back in 2019, it's 3 times more than this. Now the question is, where is this money going to come from, considering that standards of living are really high, costs of living are high? Where does this church think that this money is going to come from? A couple of questions were being formed around that over the weekend, but also quite a lot happening on the international scene, especially when it comes to the sad stories. Cyclone Freddie is really not doing quite well to the people over there. 20th of March 2023. Good morning, Uganda. My name is Philomena Masco. Welcome to a new week, today being a Monday. It's a fresh start of a new something that we're looking at. But also welcome back from the weekend. Whichever way it went, I want to believe it was better than the previous one. But if it didn't, there is quite a whole lot for it to make it better for you as we are starting off a new one. For those of you that went to church, welcome back from that. I hope the sermons that you picked, the preachings that you picked from your respective churches, you get to have them implemented in your daily life. But also a lot did happen over the weekend. Speaking of church, I did see the Ginger Catholic Diocese come through to announce that they needed 2.2 billion Ugandan shillings. Now this should be in terms of getting ready for the Uganda Matters Day this year as they are hosting. But very many questions are also being raised about this money, because when you look at this 2.2 billion Uganda shillings, it is twice as much as what was asked for by the Fort Portal Diocese that did host last year. And again, if we are to compare it to the Gulu Diocese that hosted back in 2019, it's 3 times more than this. Now the question is, where is this money going to come from, considering that standards of living are really high, costs of living are high? Where does this church think that this money is going to come from? A couple of questions were being formed around that over the weekend, but also quite a lot happening on the international scene, especially when it comes to the sad stories. Cyclone Freddie is really not doing quite well to the people over there. 20th of March 2023. Good morning, Uganda. My name is Philomena Masco. Welcome to a new week, today being a Monday. It's a fresh start of a new something that we're looking at. But also welcome back from the weekend. Whichever way it went, I want to believe it was better than the previous one. But if it didn't, there is quite a whole lot for it to make it better for you as we are starting off a new one. For those of you that went to church, welcome back from that. I hope the sermons that you picked, the preachings that you picked from your respective churches, you get to have them implemented in your daily life. But also a lot did happen over the weekend. Speaking of church, I did see the Ginger Catholic Diocese come through to announce that they needed 2.2 billion Uganda shillings. Now this should be in terms of getting ready for the Uganda Matters Day this year as they are hosting. But very many questions are also being raised about this money, because when you look at this 2.2 billion Uganda shillings, it is twice as much as what was asked for by the Fort Portal Diocese that did host last year. And again, if we are to compare it to the Gulu Diocese that hosted back in 2019, it's 3 times more than this. Now the question is, where is this money going to come from, considering that standards of living are really high, costs of living are high?
Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial star 165 star 5 star 3 hash to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
The Tales of Kasozi, brought to you by Uganda Communications Commission.
Hello?
Hello?
This is Kasozi. How can I help you?
Hey, Kasozi, my brother. Long time. We last met when we were at campus. It's been a while, but you are the person I'm looking for.
Campus? Really?
Hey, you don't remember me?
Okay, so how can I help you?
I'm stuck in Gulu making millions, and I need to urgently send money to my sick mother. But I can't find any mobile money agent near me. I've sent the money to your phone, as you can see the message. It might take a few minutes to come through, but I urgently need you to send the money to my mother. Let me send you her number, and you send it to her chap.
My friend, I'm afraid your mom is going to die.
What?
Because I don't know you, I never went to campus, and I'm also in Gulu. So can we meet at CPS, we talk about it?
Stay tuned for what Kasozi does next.
Tofera, refrain from unnecessary engagement with strangers over the phone. This message is powered by the Uganda Communications Commission.
Paying your bills the old way.
Let's go. Just need to buy some power.
Paying your bills with the My Airtel app.
Bro, there's a line.
You have the power in your pocket. The power to instantly pay your bills hassle-free. Unlock that power with the My Airtel app. Visit the App Store or Google Play now.
Oh, you're back. Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda, 20th of March 2023, Monday. At that, my name is Philomena Masco and Felix Nkunda. Welcome to the Newsreel this morning. Well, today's discussion quite looking at the African continent widely. Why? Because of a number of things that will be happening today with the same likeness but a bit different here and there. Indeed, today could be quite an interesting Monday because there are high chances that we'll be witnessing a number of protests and demonstrations that are being held by opposition parties in most of these African countries. We're looking at about 6 countries, looking at Kenya, South Africa, looking at Senegal, looking at Tunisia, Gambia, and Nigeria. Now, just to start off with our very closest neighbor here in Kenya, of course, led by the opposition party head, that is Raila Odinga, the head of Azimio, who was rallying Kenyan nationals to join him in a massive protest today that he believes will probably bring the country to a standstill. And in fact, he did unlawfully declare this Monday as a public holiday. And he says protests and demonstrations will be carried out in the town at Nairobi, of course, protesting quite against a number of things. Number one, that is the high cost of living, because Kenyans have been grappling with high prices on a number of commodities, but also he's also protesting against some of the electoral inconsistencies that he believes could actually make political administration quite easier. And in Nigeria's capital, Lagos, opposition politicians have called for street protests over what they have described as rigging in the last month's presidential elections. They're not happy with the results, and even with the system that was used to declare these results is also questionable, according to them. So indeed, they're also asking for fellow Nigerians to come and join them on the street. When you look at South Africa, of course, Malema, the head of the economic fighters freedom, or economic freedom fighters rather, they're also calling on fellow South Africans to join them on the street. Why? Because of the constant rolling power cuts, looking at the high levels of unemployment, looking at corruption rates that are really frustrating them. And they indeed are asking for supporters to come through and join them this Monday. When you go to Tunisia's capital, Tunis, protests are also anticipated to be held today to pressure the government over the alleged authoritarian rule by President Kais Saied. And in fact, thousands of opposition supporters, including members of the Tunisian General Labour Union, have been rallying in the capital, Tunis. So a number of things have been laid on the table amongst these African countries. There is an aspect of it, Felix, whether this will be the answer or this will give them what they want, but also probably will be looking at the mode of response from several governments towards these protests in these respective countries. They raised quite a number of issues. We'll be looking into it. But from your opinion, when you look at these demonstrations and protests and the number of what has been considered as incitations to violence, do you think this will give them the answer they want? Which also takes us to the poll question that we are asking you today. When you look at all these protests, are protests and demonstrations the answer to political and economic challenges in African countries? Are protests and demonstrations the answer to political and economic challenges in African countries? Maybe we could start it right from there, Felix.
Well, that question directly feeds into the normative, whether politics is the solution to all political problems and economic problems. The reverse, if you reverse the question, then you will get an approach that is probably for us to pick. What is the role of politics in economic welfare stability? That would be the question for all of us if you want to look at this topic, because you would want to find out why there's a leaning towards politicians picking up the front in terms of such activism or demonstration. For us to answer the question whether or not there's a direct relationship between politics and socio-economic welfare, you'll have to first of all understand what politics is. All right? Now, politics is basically a practice of administering power that influences government trajected or projected programs or policy or whatever. But all this is done to ensure that the people who are governed are well positioned. That's why when politicians are standing, they never make promises about anything else. They always focus on, if you've seen that politics is a promise-led activity. Even you remember when we used to be in school. If you vote me, I will do this.
Yes.
If you vote me, I'll do this. So it's a promise-led sort of contract where people, the principals in this kind of contract make a promise to fulfill to the other people. Now, in turn of that, people vote you. Now, with that sort of agreement in place, it gives those people a position of evaluation and monitoring. Now, that we call opposition is part of the monitoring and evaluation bit in politics. We are only fearful to say that the opposition is a true check for government. Away from this bastardized opposition that we have in some countries, sometimes also in our own country, that the politics, the opposition has become, it has been bastardized in most of all senses. They are literally what we call backbeats, of this whole track. They're just the cause of the problem. But if you go into formidable source of opposition, you would understand that their role is bigger than just heckling.
Yes.
Their role lies in things like advisory, okay, and professional, and in terms of policy, advisory that is relevant for socio-economic welfare, not just mere lip service. Now, what we see is a repetition of remember the aftermath of the credit crunch. We had this, and at some point people named it the wind of change that took over the Horn of Africa, so many riots all over the world. Now, the economic hardships have taken all over the world, and not only uniqueness of these countries you've mentioned, the African countries. However, and the same were mostly brought by the aftermath of COVID-19. Okay?
Yes.
Given the fact that the coming into place of COVID-19 left so many companies closed.
Yes.
It left so many people jobless. So many people with big, huge debts. Banks closed. Banks took people's properties, just to mention but a few, so many things. Now, the aftermath, the immediate aftermath of COVID-19, you get the Russia-Ukraine war. Which is as disastrous as COVID-19.
Yes, I mean, we are still dealing with...
That's a matter of fact, because you saw what happened to oil and gas in that region. You saw what happened to the price of grain, just to mention but a few. So all these have been in a sequence where they have not let the world breathe. Now, the reason why Africa in particular, and probably a bit of Asian countries, are struggling with these particular times, it's because most of African countries, if any, have a plan. Most of the politicians in Africa and many other parts in the world, save places like Europe, America, and a bit of Asian. Most of African countries run on God's mercy. Let me inform you. Most of them, they are governments of events. We shall handle the event as it unfolds.
Yes. That's not the problem. That's the Tuesday problem.
Exactly. Now, because of that kind of administration, you find that the character of politicians does not directly fit into the solutions the people seek. And I can give you an example. We can even start in Uganda and we can cross over. One, look at the problem of the most, actually, let's just look on the trajectory of, let's take a study of about four items. One, food. Let's just use 4 items that matter most to livelihood of people. One, food. Okay?
Yes.
Let's look at energy. Let's look at transportation. Let's look at housing. You can also use clothing.
Medical, yes.
Medical. Thank you. Actually, let's use medical instead of transportation. Let's look at feeding, medical, movement, and later on housing. Now, we can use Uganda, we can use Kenya, we can use South Africa, we can use Nigeria. How many people, we can start here and go around those countries, in these countries, let's say Uganda, are certain about a meal? Away from people who eat and even throw food. When you notice that you're overthrowing food that year, then you say we need to rear pigs because you have a lot of food to throw. People plan, that's how people plan in this country. Because they have a lot of leftovers, then they will think of rearing an animal that can consume.
Yes.
But do you know what that's called elsewhere in the world? Wastage. When you're in Europe, you realize that people cook rice. You can cook a kilo of rice and partition it in containers, and that's going to take you for a month. You cook another kilo of posho, you partition it, then you cook, then you put in your fridge. Every morning or lunch, you carry your lunch. But here someone, he eats katogo and whatever rice and biscuit in the morning for 5,000. Lunch,
in between, there is a meal between
Bindas, whoever is passing, Wamaji, Wobumonde, Binzari, whichever, they eat mid. I don't know, it's called brunch, they call it.
Yes.
Lunchtime, they eat meat, matoke, muhogo, kaunga, vijanjaro, nsuju, nchi, mayuni, all on one plate, and there's even a side meal. Then in supper, now, someone, and this we're talking about people who are wasteful. But as someone consumes all that, there's someone who's not guaranteed that he'll get a proper meal in that day. You get the point? Now, those are some of the challenges that we face because of lack of good guidance. But away from those people who are talking about wastage, how many actually get an opportunity to get a meal a day? And let's not focus on the urban areas. If you're privileged to go to the, to the rural areas, you will be shocked. And this is the same status of almost all African countries. Don't even be deceived when you hear the countries like South Africa. There's no difference.
Yes.
When you hear countries,
I mean, these are countries that we hold in a certain type of
difference.
But yes,
I've been privileged to travel there a couple of times, and you are just as you said, a country where you're still challenged with maintaining energy. For the last 3, 4, 5 years,
rolling power cuts.
They have been load shedding.
Yes.
Now I think they have reached level 5 or 6. Last time I was there, it was level 4. Now they're about 6. Now that means you can only have energy or electricity probably about a few hours a day. Now, one of the uses of power is not for lights. These lights you see you're cooking tea. It's for production. Now that means if this is not affordable, neither available, how many people can't work? Imagine you're here working and electricity goes off. Now, those are the small indicators that later on are the evidences of poor political planning. Now, our focus of our politicians in Africa is on power maintenance. And I've said this time and again, I'll say it again, not socio-economic welfare. That's why in other countries, vis-a-vis African countries, their focus is on what we call an economic welfare political practice versus in our countries where we see a political castration. You must stay in power. You go to Nigeria, one of the biggest countries in Africa. It has over 200 million in terms of population. But what's happening there? There are regions in Nigeria where are owned by, they have been captured. Then the state is not in charge. You get? Now, when you come to elect a president, what do you look for? That's why you see, in most of the African elections, they are marred by money. Why? Political castration. Now, in countries where people will vote people because of national or economic welfare, there's not much of that money. And that's what you see in most of the European countries. People don't invest so much in elections. Someone will come from nowhere and they will be president. Look at even these Ukrainians, the Zelenskys from because people will focus on the abilities you carry as an individual. The Macrons, how did they rise to power? That's the difference. Now, when you see the opposition coming to try and take center stage, to be a mouthpiece, and I'll put that in quotes, to act like they're the mouthpiece of the ordinary person. Because the governments give them the opportunity to do that. Okay? Most of African governments have not invested in doing the actual things they promised to do. And you can also take a trajectory of the same.
So can we say that because all these demonstrations and protests are some sort of political activism or economic activism, basically to address some of these challenges, the economic insecurities and uncertainties? So can we say that this is the major role of the activism? Because at the end of the day, someone will ask, but this activism that we are seeing, will it actually give us what we want? What contribution does it play in that role of checking the government?
It does a great role, I'll be honest, if it is intentional. There's so much that goes wanting when a government is not checked in societies like Africa. You have seen where we came from, mostly African countries that we went through colonialism. You saw the effect of that. Now, that was only able to take place because there was absence of checking. Okay? Imagine if colonial masters were being checked in whatever they were doing. We wouldn't have done some things. But checks are needed, but they must be also well confined. Okay, away from the excitement of other politicians and what vandalism and all this. But even this discussion shouldn't go more about the opposition checking. What does this say about the governments, sitting governments, who are not responsive? You know, today they will tell you government is so poor. But how do you tell me a poor person? How do you steal from a poor person? Like we used to have a challenge at our home with my cousins who we used to stay with. Now, you would ask them for some money in the morning. Like, man, I need to buy maybe cassava or pancakes. And the guy will be like, I don't have money, I don't have. Now, if the guy comes back at around midday, man, I've lost my money. Have you seen? Like, dude. Now, governments are saying they are poor. But every day there's a story of someone stealing from the government.
Yes, from the government.
So who's fooling the other? What are they stealing that you don't have? Now, these are the things that push people, Philomena, to the streets. You are saying the country is so poor, but you're buying new fleets of cars for government officials. And this is the same. By the way, don't be lied that countries in Africa are any different. Apart from a few who have chosen, I don't want to give names here. Some of them have done that by choice to deal with some of these vices. For example, you're here talking about countries struggling with finances and there's someone taking iron sheets. Someone who's buying goods of 8. Like all this mess. And you can go and go and go and go on and in various countries. Same thing in Nairobi, Kenya. Okay, people are saying, guys, look here, we voted the president in power. We need to feel the impact.
Yes.
Now, it may look like it's a politics can come in to bring it out, but there's a reality under the politicking. just last week, the court did cancel, dismiss the case against the likes of Robert Sentam and the Twino Mujunis, his brother Nyanzi. And that was in relation to when they took on the roads to protest against that this thing they had put on social media. What is that tax they put on data? I don't know.
The social media, was it the OTT?
OTT.
Yes.
Now, how do you bring such a thing? But today you're discussing how do we digitalize this generation to make good out of it.
Is that what they call double standards or self-sabotage? It's one of the two.
Today you're saying you want scientists and all this, but you're arresting, but you're putting on taxes on some of the means that assist what? Now, these are things that inside. That's what I'm saying. Most of our governments in Africa don't have they have well-planned, good plans in relation to political administration.
Yes.
Trust me, they have 50-year plans. Most of the governments in Africa. They will tell you we are going to stay in this power for these years, and they have a plan. But you tell them, okay, what's the social welfare, socio-economic welfare plan for 50 years?
Well, we are looking at the impact of Monday opposition protests across Africa. Now, if you have been following news actually from last week, a number of African countries have already been in demonstrations, but there were also others that have been planning specifically for Monday, 20th March 2023, to hold their protests. Now, most of the people leading these protests, we are looking at members from the opposition parties of these respective countries, trying to challenge or trying to show their disregard and also their unsatisfied results coming in from the ruling governments, especially when it comes to the ways they've been handling the political affairs in their countries, but also the way they have been handling their economic affairs in the countries. We are looking at countries like Senegal, looking at countries like Nigeria, also looking at countries like Kenya, countries like Tunisia, where a number of political affiliated issues are being raised and also economic issues are being raised. But also one thing that we probably need to discuss, Felix, it's how some of the responses that have come in from these governments. And in fact, if anybody, they will tell you that this could be testing the line between civil liberties and security. I will tell you, for example, when it comes to South Africa, the president, that is Cyril Ramaphosa, issued a stern warning to the opposition leader, that is Julius Malema, ahead of the planned national shutdown. As a matter of fact, to just support police in terms of handling these demonstrations, they did hire about over 4,000 members from the South African National Defense Forces to deal with this amicably, but also they said if we need to get into the other side, we'll definitely get into it. When you come back here to the Kenyan government, they did actually say they accept peaceful picketing of this issue. They will protect the rights and the citizens of both the demonstrators and those that are not involved, even with the business people who were already worried and decided to close their businesses just not to be inconvenienced by this. But now when you look at the security that is already placed in some of these towns, when it comes to an individual, the civil liberty of a person, because we do agree that whatever they're protesting for, clearly it is their right. I mean, they're really bothered. It is inconveniencing them. But then we also have issues coming in with security. Doesn't this really bring a test between these two sections?
Well, of course, it's, you don't expect a sitting government to
be comfortable and okay with that.
About that, because one of the things we should know that from this you can get a downfall of government, because we have seen it. We have seen it in Tunisia before. We've seen it in we saw somewhere in Egypt. We saw what happened at the late Robert Mugabe. This is how it starts. Now, the big question then would be, do you focus your eyes on maintaining your political position or answering the questions that emerge from these rebellions or demonstrations? Where do you put the focus? And that's and that's the most hard thing, that someone is gripping on power, but also now you can't have two grips. You can only have one grip. Parliaments or governments rather should choose to have their grip either on executing the socio-economic welfare or executing the political stance administration. And that's the hardest bit for them. Now, that's why you see in other countries, people will come out and resign. You've seen the Boris Johnsons,
yes.
You've seen Strauss-Kahn, the lady who came after.
Mm-hmm.
They resign. Do you know why? Because when the pressures and they feel they can't stake them, they give an opportunity to someone else who can. Is that the same you see here? Now, that's the thing, that how they respond, the response comes in from what matters most. That's why people are saying we are going to bring military, beat you up and what? Because what's the role of that?
I mean, they have been told that they are inciting violence, specifically if actually William Ruto said Raila is inciting violence and he would not accept it.
Could be.
Yes.
Violence could be. But is it wrong what he's saying and the people struggling? We talk to people in Kenya almost, we can't even if you say that. But isn't it the reality? You get the point, like,
yes.
Away from Raila being a politician, if it was a lay person from the market, would it be any different? How about and this is the challenge, we sometimes we don't open spaces for dialogue because of the fear of our political positions. Now, partisan politics, that's the evil that comes with partisan politics. There's need to excite and to appease blocks. Every bloc needs to appease the followers. The Azimio wants to please that bloc. Now, whether what he's saying is irrelevant or relevant, as long as it pleases the bloc, the party bloc. Now, that's the evil, as I said. That's the same thing in Uganda. When an election is done, you see people trying to stay relevant, to keep the numbers. If you had about 2 million in the election, you have to keep these numbers for the next 5 years. But how do you do it? You can't do it by singing good songs. You must stay politically active. And many people lose it. That's where they lose it. That's why even in Uganda, you keep asking, but will Bobby Wine be still relevant in 2026?
Yes.
You know, Dr. B. Now, that's why you saw previously, you saw people like the Dr. Kiza Vesige. Once in a while, he would come and organize these things. They came up with a walk to work. They came up with blowing the whistle, here hooting, what type. All these will keep you politically relevant as you approach the next election. Now, the also other golden question is whether actually these people who are leading these protests are in for the people or for their own. You look at people like Raila Odinga. It is written all over him and whatever activities he's doing. Is it for him? Because he's politically being wiped out. He's politically fading. Now, you must not fade in politics to stay relevant.
You need to stay afloat. People need to understand.
At that point, that's where people like Cyril Ramaphosa says we are going to deploy. Because Malema, in his sense, is using what can bring him political sympathy.
Yes.
You know? You get the point. Because if you ask Malema, does he even have Mdara Gwenyama? He'll tell you. But he doesn't have to anyway. He's a South African who has a right to feel. And he's a leader in that discipline. Okay? Same thing with Raila. But the big question is, where do you dismantle politics from this relevant activism? That's why leaders come in to bring in police, to clash all these things, to beat people. Because there's a direct intertwining of politics and the need to demonstrate. When you go elsewhere in the world, and in those civilities that have left us far in terms of civil practices, you find people coming to streets with just placards.
Yes.
And no one is talking about party. A mother will come out and put a placard up because the tuition maybe for universities is high.
Yes.
And as a mother, not as a political party member, which is the reverse that happens.
They're not taking any sides. They're just looking
They'll
at the issues in a
and
neutral
demonstrations
format.
in Europe are exciting or funny. People can demonstrate 3. They don't need numbers to make announcements on radio. Tujja kubeera eno abanatusanga muwotere wali aberi mutwe sang. No. You find Philomena, Felix, Robert, Molen holding placards in front of, because they're the ones who are directly affected, and they feel that's how they should. But here, for us, we are focusing on numbers. That's why I told you, there's a deception that comes with African demonstrations, that largely they are political, and they're working in favor of individuals. That's why I'll tell you, the people who are arrested or will be arrested today, if they will be in Kenya or South Africa or Senegal, Nigeria, Lesotho, they may not arrest the big people. You get it? They will not arrest the Philomenas, the head of the political parties. The members will not be arrested. But the other people will be
arrested.
Because of the politics. Now, it means that these demonstrations work for individuals. What you call struggle, it is for, you're struggling for one person. Up till today, we have people who are still struggling in Machindi, who are arrested. Some because of wearing the red berets.
But I mean, we've had even a couple of Ugandans telling you that the struggle, you may think that you're all in the struggle, but when you're in the struggle alone.
Absolutely. So and it is very painful that people don't see this. However, on the other side, you would want to blame governments who have not been responsive. You know? Sometimes we can pull out the politics and focus on the ideologies or the realness that come with some of these outcries. When people go to the streets and they say cost of living is high, isn't it the truth? We can choose to leave the messenger and take the message. Because if the messenger is a political rival, we can choose to leave or ignore him or her and take the message. Do our governments do that? So all these questions must be answered today when people go to protest. But the fear that also comes with the same is, do people actually pick any lessons from some of these? Do our people pick lessons from what happens elsewhere in the world, or for us we are focused on what is in Uganda? I'll tell you why I'm asking this. Have people adjusted life? Because the reality is that life had, everything has adjusted. How about ourselves? Have we adjusted? You know? Because sometimes we are quick to blame, and this is the message that unfortunately people don't want to listen to. What is our role in the changing economic times as individuals away from governments? We have discussed governments. What is the individual role in socio-economic changing times? Is our role to stay stagnant and stuck?
Or wait for the government to take lead?
Exactly. Do you stand there and wait government to come? Or do you pick up your mantle, sit down, find how to adjust life and make it easier for you to live?
I think government can only come in to support your adjustments that you're making.
Government will do the general things.
Yes.
You cannot sit here and start saying that Nasuze Njara. Okay, you call government. Whose government? Is there a number or toll free that you're going to call government? Like, is it an individual or a place?
Well, Africa's
so that's the thing. But
the opposition
we also have a big role to play in whatever is happening. That's what I'm saying. The true discussion is probably also socio-economic emancipation by all of us. For those who are in positions of earning, great. But for those who are not in positions, how do we help them as government? How do we make life affordable by every national? The things that people crave for and the things that people go to the streets for are not the unique things. People go to the streets for the general things. Philomena, you're not going to go to the street because you want to change your hairstyle. I don't think I've seen a woman who was on the street. I don't know, I stand to be corrected. You get the point. Or a man who's on the street saying that my shoe, yagudo, rubegi. They're on the streets talking about medication, healthcare. social, like prices of commodities that are definitely directly challenged or directly influenced by government policy.
Raila is actually making noise about government returning subsidies on basic commodities.
Basic, and I love the word basic.
Yes.
Because the word basic puts such goods in a place where they are for survival, general life survival. You get it, things like salt, food, ugali, beans, sugar, milk, those things that people need to feed on a daily. How do we make them available? We talked about shelter, land policies. People's land is being taken left, right, center. By who? By people in government. You get the point? People are being thrown off, by who? People in government. So all these things are why people actually go on the street. I stand to be corrected if there's anyone who's on the streets purposes of sugar, of sweet. Sweet.
Well, the question still remains that whether these protests or demonstrations, or call them whatever you want to call them, political or economic activism, are these the answers to the challenges that are being presented by most of these opposition parties when you look at all these 6 countries, in Tunisia, in Senegal, in Nigeria, in South Africa, and Kenya as well. Well, we are yet to see how this is going to go down. Definitely, I'll be following up in all of this as the day goes by. But like I did say from the start, this is shifting away from being a coincidental Monday to what most of the politicians have actually, or opposition members have termed as a very, very historical Monday. We'll be looking out for the details and the follow-ups on that. But in the meantime, we'll be looking at some of the big stories in the Daily Nation. Ruto backs talks as Raila protest starts. And again, public universities where your tribe will get you a job. Public to access KDF hospitals. And in climate, cut off by Cyclone Freddie, Malawians face starvation. And the IEBC owes farms a whooping 4 billion Kenyan shillings in legal fees, MPs told. The Citizen Samia empowerment loans set up for review, and you'll get the story on how Samia secondary anniversary supplement pages are showing you her performance. Factors behind EAC region's 4.5% growth in 2022, and problems remain despite notable strides. Which problems are we talking about? The Citizen has that, and how to boost Tanzania's exports to India. Grab yourself copies of all these dailies to catch up on that and more. We'll go for a break. Molen will be in the house to give you more on weather and climates. Good morning.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
This is Chilling. Don't miss a brand new season of Chilling on UBC TV.
Paying your bills the old way.
Let's go. Just need to buy some power.
Paying your bills with the My Airtel app.
Bro, there's a line.
You have the power in your pocket. The power to instantly pay your bills hassle-free. Unlock that power with the My Airtel app. Visit the App Store or Google Play now.
Oh, you're back.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda. Well, it is still very cold and rainy outside for parts of Kampala and a lot of places even outside the city. We'll be looking at the weather updates, but for now we also want to look at the traffic situation if you're trying to make your way into town. And looking at areas of Naguru, looking at Lugogo, for those areas, using some of those roads that are actually getting quite intense in terms of traffic. Now, if you're coming in from areas of Nakawa, you also want to be mindful of the intense traffic that is building up as you join into the Kampala-Jinja highway. That is still right over there. But also looking at if you're coming in from Naguru Avenue, indicated by the red lines right there on the map, that is also indicating quite intense traffic, and also that is also something to consider or be mindful about. Now also the upper side, if you're coming in from that is areas of Kololo, you might also be mindful of the traffic trying to build up right there. But also for the roads joining into Useful Way, it seems to be quite clear if you're going to be using Useful Way Road, just a few distances with intense traffic indicated by the red and orange lines right there. But that one also looks to be quite easy to take for this morning. Now, Kampala-Jinja Highway, you have most places actually having intense traffic. Right as you join in from Wampeo Avenue, that distance towards Access Road, you have intense traffic from the roundabout up to the traffic lights. Now, if you're coming in also from the other side, that is coming in using Mukwano Road, seems to be having a lot of traffic this morning as well. 8th Street, that is one to look out for. But then again, as you continue with the Kampala-Jinja Road, you look at more of that traffic actually being quite clear, not a lot of vehicles on the road, it seems. Now you also have, as you join in from the upper side, that is the downside of Entebbe Road towards Kampala Road, you have intense traffic right there for those leaving town, but joining town seems to be quite okay. You have some green lines right there. But then again, for those leaving town, there is intense traffic until you reach at least the downside that is on the roundabout. Otherwise, you look at Kampala Road also getting quite clear. You have a few distances where you have intense traffic around City Square right there. That is where you have some intense traffic. But as you continue to join into Bombo Road, it looks like that is quite clear traffic for you this morning. Also want to tap into our satellites and look at how the weather is looking like across Uganda. We are already seeing rains across parts of Kampala, and that goes all the way up to areas within Wakiso, Entebbe as well, dealing with rains this morning. The system started on early on, and looks like that is intensifying, spreading across much of Central Lake Victoria Basin. It is also extending westward, so meaning that areas of Masaka, Rengo, Zimbabwe, you might have to also be dealing with most of those rains for this morning. Now you look at some of the areas as well across Midwestern Uganda. We're looking at areas of Hoima, Mubende, starting off with intense rains as well. That is where we're seeing most of those deep red orange colors right there on the map. That is where we have rains, and those are likely to actually continue for much of today morning. We're also looking at the northwestern part of the country where you have Aurora right there dealing with rains for this morning as well, and most of that is also likely to continue for much of today morning. Now the same system is extending towards the central part of northern Uganda. That is where we have Padel, we have Gulu right there also starting off quite rainy. We also are expecting that that system might continue for much of today morning. We do have a few clouds that are also starting to develop across the Karamoja region, meaning that that will also be bringing in a few rains here and there. But much of the larger system actually expected across the central part of Uganda. That is where we're looking at even areas of Ruwero right now, Woblenzi dealing with much more of those rains. We do have another intense system that is starting to build up, also starting off from the Lake Victoria Basin, meaning that also for the rains in Kampala, do expect that those will actually continue a little longer as that system will be rejoining what we have already. So meaning that it could take quite some hours before we see them clearing. We'll go ahead and look at the forecast also for the rest of Uganda and what that is coming in from the Uganda National Meteorological Authority. Also looking at the numbers in terms of temperatures for this morning. It looks like we're starting off with quite some cold weather, especially for the southern part of the country. Northern Uganda still warm. We're looking at the central part where we have Jumani, Gulu, Kitgum, Padel. We do have sunny intervals, but we are expecting that as that system moves its way there, we might have rains later as the morning progresses. Now the western area, that is for Lake Victoria Basin, Masaka, Kalisi, Zosemba, Raka, you already have rains in play over there. We do expect that that will continue for the rest of today morning, with a cool 22 degrees. Now across southwestern Uganda, we're looking at Mbarara, Ibanda, Bushenyi, as well as Ririzi. We're looking at that is rainy conditions for this morning, already intense rains over there, and quite a cold morning at 20 degrees over that area. That system will continue into the afternoon. We're also looking at Mount Elgon Highlands. That is where we have areas of Mbale, Bududa, Buko, and Sironko. We are forecasting isolated showers. Those will also be starting off with a chilly 23 degrees. Now the eastern side of Lake Victoria, that is where we have Tororo, Busia, Iganga, as well as Jinja. We're forecasting rains. We already have clouds in the area, and some of those have actually started receiving rains. We do expect that that will also continue for the rest of today morning, starting off with a chilly 24 degrees. Now looking at the eastern side of Uganda, Soroti, Katakwi, Moria, Kumi, that will be starting off with mostly intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions. Quite a warm morning for you over there as well. That is at 26 degrees. Looking at the eastern side of Central, where we have Ruwero, Woblenzi, Bururi, Nakaseke, we already have rains over there for most places. Now that system will be spreading over several places, and also expecting the temperatures will be at a cool 24 degrees. Now also looking at the central part of Lake Victoria Basin, Mukono, Kampala, Entebbe and Wakiso will still be having those rains for much of this morning, and looks like temperatures are also going to be quite down. That is at 23 degrees centigrade. We do expect that that system might also continue to cross over into the afternoon, so you can prepare accordingly with those weather conditions. But also you look at some of what is happening, what is happening across the borders. Just by Friday into Saturday, there was a huge earthquake across areas of Ecuador as well as Peru, and that brought in a lot of destruction across the area, especially the southern area of Peru, where we do know that so far more than 15 people have been reported dead, and of course with a lot of destruction. Now you have agencies from both the Peru side as well as Ecuador trying to also make more recovery on ground and assess the damage. But also what we do know so far is that Ecuador's government also reported damages to healthcare and centers and schools, and obviously also looking at about much of the southwest of Ecuador being affected, and they are saying that there are a lot of buildings and homes that have had a lot to be destroyed, and they're looking at over 3 million people that have been affected from this equator. From this earthquake that has affected Ecuador. Now also they're looking at more of those damages that have also crossed over onto the Peru side. Now Peru authorities have also come out to confirm that at least a lot of people have lost their homes, and particularly this is one that has actually been the second to hit the area. They recall one that happened in 2016, a quake that was actually further north of the Pacific coast that also that killed more than 600 people, and they're saying this is the second time they're having such a horrible moment being experienced across the area. Now, as if that is not enough, this area has also been battling with a lot of extreme effects of weather, and now they're looking at also natural calamities coming through. What we do know is that we already have humanitarian agencies on ground. The firefighters are trying to make sure that they are able to assess the damage and also help for the people that could be stuck in buildings, and of course with a lot of damages caused over there. That is for the Peru and Ecuador side. But also talking about damages, we continue to see a lot uncovering from the effect of tropical cyclone Freddie that did affect the Mozambique channel, developed from the Mozambique channel as well. It made landfall for the second time this month, and that has affected mostly areas of Malawi as well as Mozambique, but also to the areas of Zimbabwe. What we do know so far is that Malawi is reporting at least more than 44 people that have died from the effect, as well as also looking at more damages that have been caused, especially to the coastal side of Malawi. So far, most of the villages that have been swept away by intense floods resulting from the heavy downpour that was associated by a tropical cyclone Freddie. This was a very intense tropical cyclone that did actually make landfall with a lot of strong winds, and so far we also did see the World Meteorological Organization coming out to say that this is likely to have been the longest ever recorded cyclone in history, having had from the whole cycle of making landfall twice. Now also all across, you look at so far the death toll that has risen to 522 according to authorities from Malawi, Mozambique as well as Madagascar, where it actually first made landfall. The first landfall was across Madagascar. We did see a lot of damages over there. Also looking at most of the disaster management authorities that have come out, both from Malawi and also Madagascar, Mozambique, to report that also the death toll from events on Saturday did rise up to 438 across Malawi alone, where we did see the president actually also declaring a 14-day national mourning period that is for Malawi. But also that is being joined by some of the humanitarian organizations that have come to also make evacuations. We did see helicopters flying in to actually evacuate some of the people that were stuck on the island to get them into safer places. Now there is an estimate of about 345,000 people that have been affected by the heavy floods and also landslides, that is across Malawi alone. But also you look at most of the areas that have been affected to the southeastern area of Africa, Mozambique especially, and also Madagascar. Now for Mozambique, at least 67 people have died according to the authorities, and also their president, that is President Felipe, did come up to also give a mourning period for the area, that is Mozambique, and also declaring that at least 50,000 people have been displaced due to this cyclone. Now in Madagascar, 17 people were also reported dead. That is due to the effect of the tropical cyclone, but also looking at most of the villages that were also swept away because of this cyclone that is across Madagascar. Now, so far we know that most of the devastation has been felt across Malawi, where the cyclone actually had a lot of making landfall, but also this has affected a lot of sectors. Transport has been devastated over the area, but also you look at a lot of power outages, and so far they're looking at what could be a biggest devastation for the longest years in history, and also with the report coming in from the World Meteorological Organization showing that this could be the longest recorded ever across the area. Now this continues to be an effect, especially for the southern part of Africa, as we continue to see a lot of cyclones developing over the area, meaning that this also has a lot of linkage to climate change. Scientists are already coming up with links, especially with the fact that the oceans are warming, and this is creating a lot of breeding areas for most of these tropical cyclones to actually develop. They are creating conducive temperatures for those to develop, and as we look at the rising temperatures, or what you would easily call global warming, we could be looking at much more of those developing, especially for areas that are close to the oceans or the seas, and especially for Africa. That has been unfortunately the Mozambique area, Madagascar area, and now it is extending a lot of effects to Malawi. So that is something that we continue to say about how to get into climate action, also for people that need to be evacuated from such areas, but also the risk that climate change has posed to island nations. And that is why you also look at issues like sea level rise that continue to, threaten most of these island nations. Of course, the call for action is still on. We do hope that most governments take necessary precautions to get people into safety and away from danger. That is our weather update for this morning. After this, we will be going into Good Morning Uganda, that is agenda. Later than that, we'll also be talking sports, and after which we'll be taking you through Good Morning Uganda Extra. My name is Mollen Kenyana. I want to wish you a nice Monday.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Paying your bills the old way.
Let's go. Just need to buy some power.
Paying your bills with the My Airtel app.
Bro, there's a line.
You have the power in your pocket. The power to instantly pay your bills hassle-free. Unlock that power with the My Airtel app. Visit the App Store or Google Play now.
Oh, you're back.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Ginger Tea drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial star 165 star 5 star 3 hash to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda. Welcome to the agenda this Monday, 20th of March 2023. My name is Philomena Masco. Welcome back from the weekend. Quite a cold and wet Monday morning, but this is not news for us since we already know that this period that we are in, definitely quite a rainy period, of course, as warned by Mullen through the updates she's giving you every now and then. So every other day we encourage you to carry a sweater, to carry a jacket, to carry anything that is going to help you out, make sure that you navigate your morning seamlessly. And also, while at it, don't forget to grab a cup of coffee to keep yourself warm. Your health is very, very important, especially in questionable weathers like this. But also, speaking of questionable weathers like this, they have quite an immense effect on a number of things. It could be the way you travel to work and some of the hindrances you come across, but also here in Kampala specifically, we've seen quite an aftermath because of these constant rains, the floods that we find in different parts of the cities. And this morning we'll be talking about that, exactly that. And I do have a very special guest joining me this morning to help me and you address quite a number of issues, especially when it comes to the continuous floods in Kampala city. And this morning I am very lucky to be joined by Engineer Hassan Waswa from Kampala Capital City Authority. Thank you so much, Engineer, for joining us this morning. Well, seeing as the rains here, there are very many questions that will come, especially when we are talking about floods in Kampala. But one of the biggest questions, obviously, will always be about the drainage system here in Kampala. Could it be a contributing factor to why we are seeing these floods? Is there any plan that is being carried out to ensure that we have a proper drainage system? Looking at things like challenges that are being faced by KCCA in ensuring that we have an efficient drainage system in Kampala. All those we'll be talking about between myself and Engineer Hassan Waswa this morning, and also be part of the conversation and make use of our social media platforms. Twitter, hashtag UBCGMU. Go ahead, use our WhatsApp platform as well, which is very open to you, 0709-602-592. Well, we'll start off with this conversation, Engineer, and I would just really love to know, how would you describe the current state of Kampala's drainage system as we stand right now?
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Masiko. The current status of Kampala drainage, according to our research, it's at an efficiency of about 65%. This would derive from what they call the flood hazard analysis and the flood risk. It has a lot to do with the impact of floods in terms of a certain area. So the flood situation is different for all areas. For example, if you are on the hill, the flood situation is different. If you are at the downstream sections, the flood situation is different. However, we address this through something we call integrated flood management. We look at the entire what we call the catchment, the entire contributing area of the location we are looking at. Currently, we have about 8 primary channels that drain Kampala, that take all this water we see outside into to the discharge points, and we have about 365 secondary channel networks. These are the ones that drain the collection point, then go into the primary network. According to, like I said, we have an efficiency of about 65%, which means we still have some work to do in terms of improving. Basically, what causes a flood is the inability of the system to work, because we know very well that when you have a bottle of 20 liters and you put there water, which is 20 liters, it should accommodate that 20 liters of water you have. However, when you put excess, of course it will overflow. That's how flooding occurs. It is just that this system, the crossings, the size of the drains, some don't have the capacity to carry the accumulated runoff, the water that comes onto the system. Yes.
Okay.
So the situation is that.
Okay. So what are some of these challenges you'd say, actually some of the biggest challenges that are affecting the city's drainage system generally?
We basically have about 3 challenges that we deal with. One, like I explained last time I was here, is that drainage needs space. And we don't have this space. You know, the land tenure in Uganda, land is owned by the people. So it means that, let me say, drainage needs 20 meters to function the way it should function. You don't have those 20 meters. You either have a perimeter wall of someone, you either have a house of someone. So it becomes a challenge to us because we know what to do. Sometimes we even have the funds to do it, but because of the space, our people, they are not so willing when it comes to giving what I would call free space.
Yes.
Yeah, but then normally, you know, drainage follows corridors. It's something you cannot divert. It's A to B. That's it. So if you have someone within that corridor, it becomes a major challenge. The second challenge is about the solid waste management. Now, like I said, drainage needs capacity to function, but you can have the capacity in place, but you need the drainage to function the way it's designed. However, if the community around don't have good solid waste management practices, they use our channels as dumping grounds for garbage. Someone gets a sack of bottles and whatever.
I mean, you find trash.
Yes, trash. Then it dumps into a channel. But these channels flow. They are constantly like, now it's raining.
Yes.
Someone knows when it is raining, they come and dump it. He might be upstream, it might not affect them, but what happens to downstream people? What happens to people who are at the bottom? The other challenge is about what they call catchment properties, the way the space is built up. As you are aware that most of our areas are not built up, especially when it comes to low-lying areas, or if it is built up, it's not built up in a well-engineered way. So what happens is, because of erosion, a lot of soil comes from the upper catchments and comes and blocks blocks the drainages. Now, a channel which is, for example, 1.2 meters, will have a silt deposition of like 0.4, which means now this channel is 0.8 meters deep. It will not function as it was supposed to function. And then the last reason why we have this issue is because, like, as we are aware, water has to go somewhere. Doesn't disappear. This water is supposed to go to what we call the receiving bodies. Those are the rivers, the lakes, and the swamps.
Yes.
But now the swamps are being encroached on by some developers. So what happens when the swamps are? You can't pump water upstream. So it means that the backflow from the swamp, because most people who encroach on swamps fill them with soil and hardcore, so it backflows into the communities, and that is where we have the major challenge. So those four challenges are the ones that are really affecting drainage currently.
Okay, and later on we'll be circling back to see what are some of the steps that are being taken to address some of these, because I know there are a few strategies probably you have in the pipeline, but who is also responsible for maintaining the Kampala drainage system, and what exact role do they actually play in ensuring the maintenance and the sustainability and also the efficacy of this drainage system for it to do the most that it can do for now, at least to operate at the 65% that you talked about?
Yes. First of all, it's our responsibility. KCC's responsibility is to maintain the drainage, especially in our geographical limitations. However, we have, drainage is transboundary. What I mean is that you cannot say that drainage is only stopping in Kampala.
Okay.
For example, we have a major channel called Mayanja. It goes into Wakiso. So they're also responsible for that section. We can do our part, but remember, this is where the channel ends up. And I think that the ones outside Kampala, they're responsible. Us, we are responsible for the one within Kampala. We have about 1,000 people clean these channels. I think if you have moved around, you see people in the drain trying to remove soil, trying to remove garbage.
Yes.
And the team is dedicated. Even as I'm speaking now, much as it is raining, our team is already on ground trying to clean up these channels. However, given that the drainage network is big, we have about over 300 kilometers of drainages. It's a big network. So we tend to we tend to maintain the critical sections, the ones that we think that once we maintain this section, like I explained earlier, you reduce the flood risk. The flood risk is there, but we bring it down with good proper maintenance. So yes, we are maintaining the drainages. We have a budget of maintenance, and we clean these channels every single day, 7 days a week.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, we're talking about addressing the continuous flooding in the city. I am sure at one point, while making your movements around, you could have been inconvenienced by floods in one road or two, especially now that it is raining every now and then. And it's always one of the biggest worries when it comes to the transportation to logistics here, transportation logistics in Kampala. It's one of the few worries that have been expressed by a number of Ugandans, especially in the roads. So this morning we're talking about that. What is Kampala Capital City Authority doing about that? What plans do they have? And also drawing for us an overall picture of how the drainage system is standing currently here in Kampala. Let us know. Any questions, obviously, will be welcome, and we'll be addressing them to our guest here, Engineer Hassan Waswa from KCCA. But also, one thing I'd love to hear from you, climate change is quite something, is a topic that we have been talking about every now and then. It has affected quite a number of things. And I do believe that it has played a thing or two, especially when it comes to the changes on Kampala drainage system. How has climate change influenced Kampala's drainage system?
Thank you. That's a very good question, Ms. Masco. It's very good that you have brought it up. Climate change, the way it has affected the drainage is that rain comes about when water evaporates, that hydrological cycle we all studied at school.
Yes.
So what happens is when there's a lot of heat, means there's a lot of evaporation. When there's a lot of evaporation, which means the rainfall intensity, the amount of water that comes for a particular period of time, they are short but very, very high intensity rains. So that is how it affects. We normally put a factor when we are. Remember, I said drainage should take into account the amount of water you're collecting.
Yes. Then
you size it, the size you require, then you discharge it. We normally consider climate change when we are coming up with those values we estimate, which is about 15% increase. However, we are revising those guiding design values again to cater into the climate change. But however, this will feed into design. When design is done, design should be realistic. So if we are using 15%, we are doing further studies to see can we use 20%, 25% to kind of estimate the range a little bit higher than they actually are. So we are taking into consideration that, and we shall implement drainages that are big enough to accommodate those changes.
Okay. So do you say that the city is actually adjusting to some of these changes, the climatic changes? Are we already there, or we intend to adjust to them eventually?
We are already there. However, we even try through our physical planning team, we try to maintain a certain green space to limit. We are trying to reduce the amount of energy in the atmosphere, because if the more the energy in the atmosphere, the higher the intensity of the rains. So we are taking steps in the right direction, but also from the engineering point of view, we are really considering these changes aggressively. And for rains that are coming, we are going to enforce this climate change factor even more.
Okay.
Yes.
Also, we cannot downplay the influence or the impacts that the drainage system, overall drainage system has, especially when it comes to the city's infrastructure development. Now, if you could you take us through some of the ways the drainage system overall really impacts on the city's development, the city's infrastructure, to mention but a few?
Thank you so much. First of all, drainage is meant to take high water from the infrastructure you're saying. So of course it has an impact. It has an impact on the roads. It has an impact of where you stay. It has an impact of even the public spaces where we go, maybe to a restaurant. So it has a very big impact. However, how we intend to address, like I said, is that the drainage has three systems. It has the primary channels, the secondary channels, and the tertiary channels. The tertiary channels are the ones that drain the roads, the infrastructure you're talking about. Every road that we do in Uganda or in Kampala, to be specific, of course has a drainage network. Even your building, I'm sure if I go outside the station, I can see that you put some gutters somewhere, directed water, did some channels outside your premises. So that is all part of the drainage that assists the drainage network function. The issue of the public infrastructure, it's 100% our responsibility. That's why when we're implementing projects, we actually review the road design vis-a-vis the drainage design. Is this drainage sufficient? Because when you provide a design of a road, the drainage is sufficient, and where is the water going? We have to channel this water from the road directly to the discharge point. without affecting anyone. Then when it comes to private developers within the network, we have a physical planning team where we review these submissions, private submissions. You want to build your apartments, you want to build a hospital, you want to build a school. We have guiding factors. We say, if a school, this is the minimum size you need of drainage in your premises. Please, if you are doing a house, have some rainwater harvesting. At least we encourage within the premises, have some rainwater harvesting somewhere. At least if you are discharging 40 liters, you discharge 20 liters. If imagine part of you discharging less amount of water into the system, it can cause a lower value of discharge into the system. Now, the third thing is that drainage is it's multi-stakeholder engagement.
Yes.
What you do, much as you may be alone at home, affects the entire drainage network. If you decide to not have gutters on your roof, that water is just going to move onto the surface of the road. It's not channeled, it's not directed, it's just moving to the surface of the road. Yet there's a channel outside where you can direct this water. So with time, we engage people, we try to have sensitization campaigns and tell them that there's a way you can manage through the sustainable urban development systems, water internally in your premises, whereas impacting generally on the entire drainage network of the city.
Okay.
So everybody has a role to play.
All right. I do understand, and I love the fact that you talk about the private developers and some of the guidelines you give them. But do they appreciate some? Because it's always, I feel like personally, it's one of the biggest challenges, private developers heeding to some of the guidelines you give them. Do they appreciate them? Do they understand what they are? And do they follow through with these guidelines?
No.
Or it continues to remain also another challenge?
Thank you so much. First of all, compliance is a must. That's why when you want to build your house, when you're going to build something and it's within Kampala, you apply. So it means it is a must. You have to pass through the system.
Yes, it's mandatory.
Yeah, mandatory. It's not something that is optional. However, we under the you give me a chance to talk about it later. Under the Kampala Drainage Master Plan, there's a section called the T2 Design Guideline of Stormwater Facilities. We developed this document specifically to address that problem, and it is on our intranet. Anybody can access it. This document guides on how private developers should go around drainage privately.
Yes.
They get a competent engineer. This document is step by step. It is so detailed that we even developed some design values for particular locations. Because of that, it makes it easier. So we have a team at City Hall. Once you apply for the development as a whole, we have a team that specifically looks at drainage, and then we try to guide you on how best you can implement these guidelines within your private system without necessarily being so rigid or being so. Basically, we integrate. If you want to design an apartment, for example, we encourage you to have underground water tanks. We encourage you to have gutters on the roof. All these are in those guidelines.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, I also understand that there are contributions that have to be made by different stakeholders. Of course, KCCA as an authority, but also the citizens. And right now, I want to focus on the citizens. What role do they play, especially when it comes to maintaining or contributing to the improvement of a proper drainage system here in Kampala? What is their fraction of contributions?
First of all, thank you. We construct this drainage for our citizens, our people. They are meant to serve our people. They are meant to, like I said earlier, reduce the flood risk. The roles that our citizens have are mainly three roles. One, a sense of responsibility that this drainage is for the community. It's not for the individuals, it's not for us, it serves the community. That is why they move along different areas. If I go outside here, the drainage moves from up here up to down the other side. So all those are involved. When that is appreciated, it means they're going to protect it. It means when someone is driving his car and sees some unfortunate person dumping garbage in the channel. You'll question it because he has that sense of responsibility that this drainage is serving me. Even in the dry season, we protect these things. Then too, the other responsibility they have is to protect the discharge points. Water has to go somewhere. So it means that if you see someone encroaching on a wetland, or if you see someone building in a wetland, or if you see someone doing something that you think doesn't favor the drainage system to function, someone is blocking. Some people actually block drainage. For example, if you are along a slope and the road is up, the other road is down.
Yes.
Some neighbors close off drainages and say, take your water somewhere else. But we know water doesn't work like that. That is why we always encourage to leave service lanes within the plots of land to take this water downstream. So that is second. That is the second part, to give space for this drainage to function. Okay. So if we have those three things from our citizens, we shall be very grateful and we shall have improved drainage.
Okay. Well, right there, we'll go back to the challenges that you did mention. You talked about some of them, space. You don't have space to ensure that some of your works are really done efficiently. You talked about, was it solid waste management? Yes, you actually mentioned 4. And I would love to know, how are you trying to approach these challenges? How are you trying to address them as KCCA?
Oh, thank you. First of all, when it comes to solid waste, let me begin with the solid waste management aspect, how we're trying to address it. We're trying to get the private sector involved. If you have moved around, you have seen some vehicles, some garbage vehicles moving around, which charge a small fee to take the garbage. We are trying to increase, we believe that if we increase the reach in terms of how many people we can collect this garbage from, it will really be more inconveniencing for you to dump garbage in the channel rather than waiting for a truck to come. And so we are increasing that capacity.
And they're operating within only the areas that are still under KCCA?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they're operating in the areas under KCCA. And the second part we are doing is about the encroachment, the corridors, the space I was talking about. This is a constant battle that we are undertaking. One, we are going to for the reserves that we have, we are going to protect them. We are going to gazette them and protect them. Because some channels have not really been encroached on a lot. There's some space for the expansion and maintenance corridors. Those ones we are going to protect jealously. Now, the ones where we have applications coming in and says, yes, this is a channel reserve, but this is my land, we shall try to sensitize these people. We say that water, they don't block water. Much as it is your land, please provide space for the channel. Then the ones which unfortunately are already encroached, we are engaging our physical planning team to try and gazette, especially the illegal ones, and gazette these corridors. And of course, we always prefer the amicable approach.
Yes.
Where we come to you and say, you know what, you encroached on a reserve, please push your perimeter wall some 2 meters to give some space. And if that fails, then we shall have to go for enforcement action along the channel reserves, which we don't normally like taking.
It's always a hard call for the people, yes.
Yes, and also, yeah.
Okay. So are there any future plans of expansion and upgrading of Kampala's drainage system? And I mean, what would be the impact of some of these expansions that we should be looking at?
Thank you. Like I said, we developed the Kampala Drainage Master Plan in 2016. We have the Kampala Drainage Master Plan to implement needs about 780 billion shillings. Of course, we don't have that money now, but we are going to do bit by bit. The master plan goes ahead and gives us what they call the priority index. What areas should we focus on that way you're going to get the maximum impact? So it shares the short term, the medium term, and the long term. So of course we're going to begin at the short term. That is between 2020, that is between 2017 and 2022. Now, the short term basically looks at what they call bottlenecks in the drainage system. It looks at which culvert is small, who is encroaching on the discharge point, who is building on the there's things we can address as fast, very fast, and and they have a very big impact. So we have those plans. We have designed a lot of crossings for the short term. Like I said, it focuses on the crossings. We have about, I think, 18 crossings that we are going to do, but we already designed and have those designs in place. But we're also trying to you see, under ADB, they're going to implement 29 roads. And these projects are ongoing. Those roads all have proper drainage networks, which we have looked at. So we are going to improve capacity. 7th Street, 6th Street, 8th Street, Port Bay Road, all those projects have drainages. A very big component, about 35% of the cost is going to drainage. So we are working tooth and nail to ensure that we fulfill our mandate to have a flood-free city. And we shall get there.
Okay. Well, before we get into some of the final questions, there is a complaint, or probably that needs some clarification about from a viewer here who says the so-called workers who clean the drainages are few, and the same soil which has been cleaned out or cleaned from the channels is being left. No vehicle comes to take away the silt. How do you plan on addressing that? Can we say you have shortages in staff to deal with some of these issues? Is that an issue that you're probably looking at?
Thank you very much. That's a good question. First of all, like I said, over 300 kilometers of drainage. We can never have enough staff. It's not possible. We cannot have a drainage worker every kilometer. So we focus on the critical areas. We developed a flood risk and hazard maps for Uganda, for Kampala, and it guides us where to focus. Normally on roadside drainages, I'm sure maybe the viewer passed by a road and saw the soil. We don't leave soil on the road intentionally. We don't say, because we also don't want to go and put the same soil you moved yesterday, and I mean, it's tiresome.
Yes.
So we try as much as possible to move this soil. But for situations like now, it is raining. When you load soil on a truck, it's going to go around. Basically, you're causing more harm. So we wait for it to dry a bit, then come and load it and take it. And also, I encourage the viewer is that we can always report that we work for the people. Our responsibility is actually to serve the people. So if a person or a client has an issue with the soil, and the information in Chiunya the soil on the ground, we move immediately and remove it. Of course, we have teams, we have tippers, we have casual laborers, over 1,000 who load this soil and take out. So it's a continuous battle against maintenance that we shall continue undertaking, and we are going to win.
Okay. Yes. Well, George Mahira here says that, is there a time frame for when we shall be able to stop seeing floods, especially every single time it rains?
You see, like I mentioned, our 2016 drainage master plan goes up to 2060. It is like a step-by-step process on how to get there. So the medium term, we are now in the medium term, and we are addressing them. Of course, like how implementation strategies there are some challenges here and there when it comes to some funding, because I mean, KCCA will not the whole year do drainages. It has other things to do. It has to take care of the maternity wards. It has to do the roads. It has to collect the garbage. So we are sharing this cake equitably to ensure that at least we have an impact on drainage in terms of. But we are doing our best, and the time frame we have now is 2060, and those are the long-term strategy. Yes.
All right. Well, Mahira Claire says, are there any cities or countries you're looking at or benchmarking on, especially when it comes to improvement of our very own drainage system in Kampala City?
Of course. You see, there's a phenomenon in drainage that says that how drainage should work is that do the drainages, whatever land is left, you develop. That's how the Netherlands did it.
Okay.
Here we do the opposite. We develop, whatever land is left,
you leave it for drainage. Yes.
So the cities we are benchmarking on, basically, the drainage master plan focuses a lot on countries that have implemented what they call SADS, the Sustainable Urban Drainage Systems. SADS, they deal with the entire drainage process, from collection, how to handle the conveyance, and how to handle the discharge. Mainly the countries that we looked at are basically the ones within the tropics. You can't benchmark on European country because you have different weather, you have different configurations.
Yes.
we're basically looking at the master plan looks a lot at Dar es Salaam and how it handled its drainage. But Dar es Salaam, we realized is semi-arid. So we looked at how Nairobi is doing, because we have the same challenges. We have looked at how Nairobi is doing it and how Kigali is doing it. So basically, those are the three cities that the master plan tries to make reference to on where they have made improvements, and also where they have made mistakes that we also haven't made. Yeah, because sometimes even in negative impact, you learn from it and you can avoid it. So those are the cities we are trying to benchmark on, and trying to see what they have done wrong and we don't do that, and what they have done right and pick up those that they have done right.
Because I was about to ask, and the vice versa, there are cities that have actually come and looked at Kampala's drainage system and used it as a benchmark for their own, drainage systems in their respective cities.
Yes. One thing I have to say is that we have a brilliant plan. The drainage master plan was well thought out. It looked at the local condition, and everything that it proposes is very brilliant. So if someone comes and borrows the drainage master plan and goes and implements it in any other city, they have a head start.
Okay.
A head start, because it well implemented the way it is, trust me, will not have flooding in Kampala.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, speaking in terms of the future, what do you see as the future for Kampala's drainage system, and also bringing in aspects of sustainability of Kampala city, but also resilience, because I believe these are two key aspects we need to look at. Now, in terms of the future that you're looking at for the drainage system, bringing it in that context, what are you seeing? Create for us a picture of that.
First of all, is that, like I said earlier, we're not moving blindly. We are moving with a plan. So the issue of resilience comes from the communities. How do they manage the flooding? Because drainage is about flood risk. So we are trying to, as much as possible, to do what they call channelization. We are expanding the drainages as big as possible. Channelize this water and take it away from the people. However, when that happens, in case you can't do that, that's what they call the structural intervention. Now, then you move on to the non-structural interventions. One, we are gazetting spaces that we know that flood. We are trying to establish a flood warning system to warn our people that, Road B, Banda, today is closed off because rain has to improve their resilience. We are trying to sensitize communities. We have people who go to the communities and through the local leaders and try to, as much as possible, to encourage these people to protect, the community members to protect the drainage. If you see someone taking garbage, go and report to the chairman. Then another way we are doing this is we are implementing the laws. We are trying to get our drainage master plan into the design manuals so that it becomes compulsory. It becomes compulsory to actually have the sustainable urban development systems. What do I mean? It will not be telling you that in your area, please leave 40% green. Don't construct everything. We want to be in a way that it's a law. It's no longer something of goodwill.
Yes.
So if we implement those, I'm sure we shall be okay.
Okay. Yes. Well, as we are signing out, what would be your final shots for the Ugandans, especially in weather settings like this?
Thank you. As we are signing out, one is drainage is for all of us. All of us use it. It doesn't matter whether you stay in Kololo, somehow you are going to go to the market somewhere in Banda or somewhere in Nakasero. So it means whatever you do affects you somehow. So I tell, we are going to do our part as KCCA, especially the structural measures I talked about, to implement the master plan the way it is. However, people should protect the drainage system in a way that jealously. It's like you someone can come and knock your fence. So that's how that's the kind of responsibility we want from our people. So what that means is that, one, report any encroachment on the channel immediately on our platforms. Two, report any person who doesn't have a proper solid waste management plan, and you see that the methods they have.
Yes.
Then 3, let's avoid illegal connections on these channels. When I say illegal connections, is that someone doesn't have facilities for convenience, and they decide to connect all the sewage onto the network. It's a health hazard to our workers. It increases the capacities of the drainages, and we don't cater for these when we are doing the design. So I request that if we can, in those 3 aspects, be able to work together. I'm sure as we work on the structural interventions and our communities work on some of the non-structural interventions, we shall have a very beautiful and smart city.
Well, thank you so much, Engineer over there. That is Engineer Hassan Awaswa from Kampala Capital City Authority, giving us or creating for us a picture of Kampala's drainage system, what plans they have as an authority to make sure that it is efficient, it delivers, but also sharing some of the responsibilities that have to be played by different stakeholders. That is, of course, the authority, but even you as a Ugandan, as a citizen, what role do you have to play in ensuring that the efficacy of this drainage system is registered at 100%? Especially in weather conditions like this. But also I urge you to be very cautious on the roads, especially the parts that really do come along with floods, especially with heavy downpours. Please stay cautious on the road. We want you safe and sound, and hopefully we can see this master plan that the engineer has shared with us eventually come to light at 100%. And that 65% operational percentage filled up to 100% as well. We will leave it at that. Obviously, we have Ruben Mpima Chiriango coming in with the sports updates after this, and we have Good Morning Uganda extra queued up as well. I am Philomena Masco. Have a wonderful Monday and a very productive week ahead. Good morning.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions.